Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to talk about curricular practical training, otherwise known as CPT, our webinar for 2025, spring 2025. I'm Donna Steinfeld, Senior Associate Director Advising Services at ISSS, and I'm joined here by Jean Ma, one of our ISSS advisors. Jean, if you'd like to say hi.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name's Jean. As Donna mentioned, I'm one of the advisors at ISSS.
So Jean and I are going to go over the presentation. We will answer, questions in the Q&A as we go along, and then any we can't answer during, we will take at the end as well. And just so you know, CPT is for F1 students. So just so you know, this is specific to F1 students and students that are currently in their academic programs. So this wouldn't apply to, for example, if you're graduating this May, just so you're aware. So this is for current students who are F1. All right, well, it is 2 o'clock right now. Some other housekeeping notes is that you will be sent if you're registered for the webinar, you'll be sent a copy of the presentation and the link to the video, and the video will be available afterwards. So if you don't, if you miss anything or there's something you want to go back to, you will get this information afterwards. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? And so you hear a lot about CPT, but what is the purpose of it? Why is this part of one of your F1 benefits? So it is an employment authorization that it allows you're gaining experience in your field while you're working towards completing your program of study. Go ahead. So what is the criteria? So basically, so you mentioned that it's something while you're going towards your program of study, and the criteria for the CPT work authorization is that it is integral part of your established curriculum, and either of these scenarios must apply. The internship is required of all degree candidates in the program. That's something that's only a few programs. We don't see that fairly often. Or the internship is an integral part, of your established academic curriculum. So you possibly are getting academic credit for the work that you're doing. So you have an academic course and enrollment that is corresponding to the work you're doing that you have to fulfill. And Jean, I'm going to let you go ahead. I know I think I took a couple of your slides, but we can transition here if you'd like.
Sure. So in addition to the those basic criteria mentioned in the previous slide, every school within Penn has slightly different policies and procedures for CPT. For convenience, we have some of these school CPT policy websites listed here, as well as on ISSS CPT website. However, if you don't see your school program not listed, please feel free to reach out to the school directly for your CPT options. Okay, so eligibility requirements. So CPT is only available to students in valid F1 status, as Donna previously mentioned, and you have to be lawfully enrolled full-time while physically present in the U.S. for at least one academic year or 2 consecutive semesters, except for graduate students, if your degree program requires immediate participation in an off-campus internship or practicum. And you also have to have a declared major and be in good academic standing. And also having a job offer letter for the position that's directly related to your major. And then also you will have to be registered for a course that will take place at the same time of the CPT internship experience. And then if you are a PhD student in dissertation status, you may be eligible for CPT if the training is necessary for the completion of your dissertation research. And then last but not least, the training experience must be, as mentioned, directly related to your declared major at Penn. Okay, the CPT application process. First, you must obtain a job offer letter, and then you need to register for the CPT course. And for that, you should reach out to your academic department or program for assistance if needed. They will be able to tell you what course to register, when to register, and so on and so forth. And then you complete a CPT request form in IPEN, where you'll be asked to upload a copy of your offer letter. So it's important that you have the offer letter before you complete a CPT request form in IPEN. And then the request will be reviewed by your academic department before it comes back to ISSS for final approval, upon which an I-20 will be issued with the CPT authorization on page 2. So just to note that ISSS processing time can take up to 7 business days during peak season, so it is essential to please plan ahead. Okay, next. Is that me or are you, Donna?
I
I
can
can
go
continue.
ahead. And also there was a question about whether there was mute. I could hear you, Jean, but in the Q&A, if anyone else did not hear Jean, please let us know. But I was able to hear you, Jean. So if there's anyone else having audio issues, just to make sure it's not something that's on our end. Okay, we're all set now. Great. Yes,
Okay.
I can go ahead and I can start from here.
Okay, thanks.
So the CPT application timeline. So usually what you're going to do is CPT is going to be in line most likely with the course registration term. So in most cases, it is going to be you're taking a course and registering for a summer, which is going to be when you're doing that course registration. So you're working and being registered for CPT during that term. If it's during the semester itself, again, usually it's going to be a registration in the same term as well. So let's say, for example, you are we're an MBA student and you're going to take Management 8910. That is something that's registered during the summer and you're doing it for employment that occurs during the summer. But anything during the academic year would be a different course and registration. And you want to allow, so you want to, make sure you're allowing at least 2 weeks before your CPT begins so it could go through these steps. So the steps are going to be first, you're going to be registering for a CPT course. And at the same time, or it could be before you're securing an internship. So these things are happening in advance of your application with ISSS. So you're applying through IPEN, and then your academic advisor approves that e-form, and then it comes to us and we actually approve the CPT. So you want to make sure there's enough time. So basically after you get, getting the internship, registering for the course, then ISSS application, approval by your academic advisor, and then we're processing that CPT. Okay. Okay. So some of the basics are that this is, as I mentioned kind of at the intro, is this is employment options before you graduate. So this is while you're in your program itself. There's the OPT is the post-completion OPT is something you would use after graduation, but CPT is only while you're still a student. As I mentioned, we approve it. It's not it goes through CVIS, and we do the approval and give you an I-20 that has that approval. It's not going to go through an additional review by another government agency. You do have to have completed one academic year of full-time enrollment with an active CVIS record. There are some very limited exceptions to that, and that's basically where everyone in your program, maybe there is an internship that is required as soon as you begin, but that's something that everyone has to do. And it's very limited. There's maybe 2 maybe 2 programs at Penn or not. So that's not going to apply to most people. It must be related to your major, and you cannot start work, and that includes unpaid work or orientation training until we approve the CPT and we give you that CPT I-20. So you're going to have the actual approval on the I-20 on page 2. Okay. Things to consider when applying for CPT is the future implications of it. So 12 months of full-time CPT would eliminate OPT benefits. This is not common. It's something that could perhaps happen, let's say like doctoral students using it for their dissertation. But just to remember, 12 months of full-time CPT, you would lose OPT. But again, that's not 12 months of part-time. It's not 11 months of full-time. It's 12 months of actual full-time CPT. Things to consider as well is if you're applying, let's say you're doing STEM OPT, maybe your employer is doing an H-1B. LPR is a legal permanent residence. Maybe you're going for a green card someday. This is when they could inquire about the CPT you had as a student. And this is why it's so important that it is something that's part of your program. You have a course registration. This is established. You probably want to keep any type of documentation as to why you were given CPT, because this is when this could come up. They might want to say like, okay, it says you had CPT base, this was a class that you took, having that information. So that's why it's very important that CPT has these criteria to it that need to be adhered to, and that what we work so closely with the schools, as Jean showed in the previous slide, the different policies that exist over many of the programs, and why we need to make sure it's adhering to those different policies. So that way in the future, you are able to give that justification if ever asked. Okay. So some of the important reminders and conditions: CPT can be part-time or full-time, but only full-time CPT when classes are not in session. So if you're not taking class, so basically summer breaks, you're in your dissertation period, you don't have classes, but when classes are in session or it's your final semester and you're in, let's say CPT is required for your program, you know, it's going to be only full-time when classes are not in session, and part-time during the other, whether it's during the academic year or let's say it's your last semester and it's summer. You're going to report any changes to ISSS. You want to make sure to let us know. Do you need longer time on your CPT? Does your employer want you to work a few days longer? Do you need to start sooner? You changing employers, anything like that in advance, make sure that you are letting us know, because we are putting on your I-20 that you are working for ABC company from June 1st to August 1st, 2025 in this city, in this address. So it's very specific to what you're doing, and you want to make sure you're always updating us of changes. You also could possibly have, multiple employers. Let's say you're doing a CPT course this summer, but you're going to have 2 employers. Maybe they overlap, maybe they're back to back. But in the e-form itself, there is an option to list both employers on the e-form. So you want to make sure, academically, you're allowed to use both of those employers to fulfill your course requirements, but that you're also requesting both of those in your CPT process. So the next thing is to choose your start and your end date. So CPT dates, they fall within the semester you're requesting. This is something that usually is done semester by semester. So if you're doing it within the term, the student you're requesting it, for example, let's say it's summer. So after the final exam period is over, is likely going to be, in most cases, the earliest start of summer 2025 CPT. And the end date has to be before classes start, so on or before August 25th. If you have any questions about start date and you're done your program, you can definitely talk to your academic advisor, and your academic advisor can confirm with us if you're completely done all your finals. But usually you're going to see around May 14th, for example, this year be the earliest possible date. Okay. All right. Jean, did you want to take the next couple slides?
Okay, so some frequently asked questions. Can everyone hear me? I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so how long does CPT take to apply for? As mentioned, CPT is processed within Penn, so it involves your academic department as well as ISSS. So depending on how quickly that your department handles CPT request, normally I would say 2 to 3 weeks minimum before the start of your internship to allow enough time for your department and for ISSS to process. Do I need to have a job offer letter before I apply for CPT? Yes, you must obtain an offer letter from the employer, as oftentimes that letter will be submitted to your academic department for review before you can submit a request to ISSS. And also, when you fill out your CPT request form in IPEN, we will also ask you to upload a copy of the offer letter. Do I need to send my CPT request to USCIS? No, CPT request is handled here at Penn by your academic department and ISSS. Can I start working after I submit CPT to ISSS? The answer is no. You have to wait until after your CPT has been approved, CPT request has been approved, and that you receive the I-20 with CPT authorization on page 2 before you can start working. Next question. I have submitted my CPT a while ago, but I haven't heard anything yet. What should I do next? In that case, if after a couple of days and there has no progress made, usually we recommend that you reach out to your academic department and let them know that you submitted a CPT request and see if they can and see if they received it and see if they can process it or understand the timeline. Or ISIS advisor here can also help submit a reminder email through IPEN. That way, the person or the office that handles reviewing of your request will be reminded to review the request that you submitted in IPEN. Next, I just got an email from my school informing me the e-form is approved. Can I start working now? No. You still have to wait for ISSS to process your CPT request. So you will have to wait until after the CPT is approved and that you've received the I-20 with the CPT authorization on page 2 before you can start working. Can I work with 2 employers under one CPT request? Yes, you can. However, you will have to submit the employer information separately in the request form so that we know you will be working for 2 employers and that each employer will be properly added to your CVIS record so that your I-20 will show that you're working for 2 employers under CPT. Next. Social security number application. This is for students who don't already have a social security number and need to apply for one, especially if you are going to an internship that's paid this summer. And just a reminder that social security number is not a work authorization. It does not give you the permission to work in the US. It's strictly for tax purposes and also for the employer to properly pay you. So documentation needed for an SSN application. First is your I-20 endorsed for CPT, which, as mentioned, you will need to apply with the ISSS and receive that I-20 in the email. Your passport, your I-94 travel record, which you can download from the CBP website that we listed here. You must make sure that you bring all the original documents. So the I-20 that you want to print it out and sign by pen. And a reminder that if you are applying for a social security number based on this off-campus employment in the summer, you will have to wait until at least 30 days before the start date of the summer internship to apply for an SSN. Otherwise, your application will be rejected, or they will ask you to come back when 30 days is here to apply. And we have more information, including a complete a list of things that you will need on our website, so that you can check for future reference as well. Next. Oh, that's it. All right. Please let us know if this webinar has answered your questions by scanning the code in front of you. And now we'll be taking questions if anyone still has any.
So it looks like we have a couple questions in the Q&A. One of the first questions is, if the employment date changes, will we need to submit the application? I would suggest, if your employment date changes, the best thing would be to reach out to your ISSS advisor. If it's just a slight date change, we may ask for an updated letter from your employer confirming the new dates, but it shouldn't have to go through the whole process. So the best thing is first let your ISS advisor and have something, even if it's just an email from your employer confirming they would like you to work, let's say 1 week later. And if it's something more significant, we can let you know what's needed in addition, but that would be the process I would advise to do. The next question is, what should we bear in mind if leaving the US for a few weeks before returning to start internships? Ensure we have the I-20 with CPT authorization, have SSN appointment within 30 days before internship start, anything beyond the usual. Jean, did you want to take that, or do you want me to?
I can answer that. So as you mentioned, having the I-20 with CPT authorization is important before. So if you're able to apply, I would say definitely apply for CPT, have it authorized before you leave the country. And if you can, work out with the timeline wise, if you can work out with the Social Security Administration to apply for your Social Security number before leaving, that would be great. But if you have to leave, prior to you being eligible to apply for a Social Security number, that's fine as well. Social Security number is not necessary to start working. But eventually you do need to have the Social Security number to give it to the employer. So if you're not able to apply for a Social Security number before leaving the US for the summer, it's not crucial. But you want to make sure that you have at least communicate that with your employer and let them know that this is a situation that you're unable to apply, so that your employer is aware of that situation. And then also make sure you have all the normal travel documents with you when you travel. For example, your valid passport, your valid F-1 visa, and also because you are currently enrolled as a student, you want to make sure that you also have financial support documentation that's currently listed on your I-20, showing that how you're being financially supported here at Penn. Those are all important documentation to have.
Thanks, Jean. So the next question is, are we allowed to leave the US? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back up. Actually, the next question is, do I need to select a relevant class so that I can apply for CPT? Most likely, in most cases, yes. So usually there are some academic programs that have designated courses, or a course that could possibly be an independent study where you have working with a professor and structuring it, or to have an academic deliverable that is associated with the independent study that you're registered for, and or it could be, when a class might not be needed, would be, let's say, your full-time dissertation and it's integral to completing your dissertation, or your academic program perhaps requires everyone to have an internship experience. So depending on which program you're in will determine what class or what your options are course-wise or not.
Okay, so the next question, are we allowed to leave the US before the internship end day if the internship is remote? There's no restriction that you cannot travel outside the US while you're on CPT. This is something that you need to work out with your employer or discuss any travel plans while you're doing your internship. And another important point to consider is that if you will be working for your employer, even just for a few days outside the US, you want to make sure that that's okay with your employer because sometimes working outside the US for a US-based company may have international tax implications that we're not able to advise. So it's important that you talk to the employer regarding any travel plans that you may have while you're engaged in summer CPT.
Okay. So the next question is, if I get a job offer, let's say in May or June, can I still select the required class? It's possible. I mean, a lot of it could depend on if there's registration restrictions for your program or school, if there's any established deadline. But the best thing would be to start looking into it now. If you're currently interviewing, we're not too far from May, believe it or not. And so to find out what your options are, what is the deadline to register? So if you do get an offer, it's likely, if you can register for the course and request a CPT, we'll be able to turn that around, but you probably want to make sure you have everything lined up if that's something you think you may do this summer. All right, there's no more open questions. Is there any other questions that we can answer? Okay. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful. And please, oh, there's one more question. I-9 Section 1, should we put Philly address or temporary New York address for the I-9? I would say we would redirect any I-9 questions to your employer. It's not an area that we specialize. That is an employment form. So I would suggest to refer that to your employer. Okay, last call. Any other questions? Oh, there we go. Can I have more than one internship after 1 year of classes? So if after 1 year of classes, if you are looking, it may be possible if, for example, it could depend on which program you're in. And will you have multiple options to have CPT? For example, 1 year classes as a freshman, it's not as many options. It might not be feasible your freshman year because you do have to have a declared major. 1 year after the 1 year after maybe being in a 2 year program during that summer, you may have the option for CPT for one or more employers at the same time. Or if you're in a program that has multiple course options, regarding CPT, it may be possible to have more than one. So if you know if it's something that you want to know more about which specific to your program, because just to kind of reiterate, what we want to do is with CPT is that it all links to your academics. um so if you think back to that list, you go into our CPT website. If you're in one of those program listed, there could be a very detailed explanation from your school. If you're from a school that maybe doesn't have as many CPT, maybe like there's just CPT isn't as big a part of the program, then it's always something that can be discussed further. So Jean, do you want me to take this last one?
Well, I was going to say, we can briefly mention that there's currently no travel restrictions or bans in place, but I think it's best for this question to be addressed by an appointment that if you can schedule with an ISIS advisor.
And just to follow up, it looks like Juan mentioned that you're doing an MBA. the MBA program, 2-year program, it does have a very fixed CPT option during the summer. A lot of times MBA students during year 2 may do a independent study project with a professor to do CPT during the academic year. But if you have specific questions on the academic side, definitely talk to your cluster advisor in the MBA program office. And then if you have the immigration questions as a follow-up, definitely reach out to your assigned advisor. But it is something, and it's not uncommon for students to have maybe 2 internships during the summer. And again, you can request both of those as part of the e-form. So you may have ones that, again, they could overlap, they could be at the same time, back to back. It's very possible.
All right, next question. Should I check with my graduate department if they can prove my CPT before I go find a job? So as we mentioned, if I understand this question correctly, as we mentioned, you have to find a job first. You have to have an internship offer first before you can apply for CPT. Unlike OPT, you don't need a job offer to apply, but CPT, you do have to find a job first to apply. Once you have the offer from the employer, you can go ahead, absolutely. If you're from GSC, then you can absolutely start your CPT request with GSC. And then you can apply for CPT while you're abroad. If you have to travel, that's not an issue. So just so that you are aware, you do have to find a job first before you can begin the CPT request, even with GSC.
All right. I don't want to speak too soon. If there's any other questions? Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone. We hope you have a great rest of your Monday, and we appreciate you taking the time to attend today. And again, you'll get copies of the slides, and we will have a recording of this presentation. Wishing you a great day. Thank you, Jean.
Yeah.
And thank you behind the scenes, our colleague Mike. But it's been great to meet with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.